On the edge of a forgotten frontier, a woman builds her cabin alone, one log at a time. But a widowed cowboy watching from the ridge carries a longing deeper than the valley below. What happens when their pasts collide in the wilderness? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. The first time he saw her, she was dragging a log through the dirt, bare hands, no gloves, no help, her breath rising in white clouds against the cold. It was mid-November, the Wyoming wind sharp enough to cut a man in half, yet she moved like the storm itself couldn't stop her. She was building something. A cabin. One log at a time. From the ridge above, John Mercer sat on his horse and watched. The creak of the saddle was the only sound he made, and even his horse seemed to know to stay still. He hadn't meant to stop. He'd been on his way south, same as he'd been for months, chasing work that never lasted and memories that never died. But there was something about the sight of that woman, out there alone against the wild, that froze him in place. She looked too small for the weight she was lifting, too stubborn to quit, too lonely to be safe. He adjusted his hat, squinting against the wind. Somewhere inside him, something old and broken stirred, the kind of feeling he thought the world had burned out of him a long time ago. 3 years back, he'd had a wife. A little house near Deadwood, a baby girl not yet old enough to walk. Then one winter, the fever came. By spring, they were both gone. He buried them on a hill overlooking the creek and never looked back. Until now. Now, he couldn't look away. The woman he watched lifted another log, rolled it toward the cabin frame, and tried to fit it into place. The thing slipped, landed hard on her foot, and she fell to her knees. He heard her cry out, faint against the wind. John swore under his breath and nudged his horse forward. She looked up when she heard the hoofbeats, eyes wide, one hand reaching for the rifle propped against a tree stump. "I ain't looking for trouble," John said, raising both hands as he rode closer. "Just thought you might need a hand before that foot swells up too bad." She hesitated, studying him. Her face was young, but the kind of young that had already seen too much. Dirt streaked her cheeks, her hair loose and tangled, eyes the color of river stones. "I can handle it," she said flatly. "Sure looks that way," he said, dismounting. "But from where I'm standin', you look one more log away from breakin' your back." Her jaw tightened. "You from the ranch down south?" "Used to be," he said. "These days I just keep movin', then keep movin', He almost smiled. "Can't do that. Not when somebody's tryin' to raise a cabin before the snow sets in." "You alone out here?" She hesitated. That pause told him everything. He crouched beside the log, lifted it into place with practiced ease, and looked her way. "There. Now it's square. I didn't ask you to." "I know. Sometimes help don't wait to be asked." She stared at him a moment longer, then sighed, brushing the hair from her face. "Name's Claire," she said finally. "John," he replied, tipping his hat. "Nice piece of land you got here." "Was my pa's. He passed last spring. Left it to me." "Sorry to hear it." "Everybody's sorry," she said quietly. "Doesn't change the work that's gotta be done." He nodded. "You plan to winter here alone?" "That's my plan." He looked at the half-finished cabin, the stack of logs, the broken axe handle leaning against the stump. "You got grit, I'll give you that. But grit don't keep a fire burnin' through a blizzard." She turned away, grabbing the next log. "Didn't ask for advice either." John chuckled under his breath. "Fair enough." He picked up the other end. They worked side by side till the sun began to sink behind the hills. The air turned blue and cold, the kind of cold that cut right through leather and skin. When the last log was set, John stepped back, wiping the sweat and frost from his face. "Cabin's comin' along," he said. You'll have it tight before Christmas if the weather holds. Claire didn't answer. She was staring at something beyond him, her body stiffening. He turned. 2 riders were coming down the slope, dark shapes against the fading light. John's hand went to his gun. You know them? Her voice was low. I hoped I never would again. The riders stopped a dozen yards away. The taller one grinned, showing a mouth full of bad teeth. Well, look what we got here. Little Claire Thompson, buildin' her nest. Claire's eyes went cold. You ain't got business here, Vince. Sure we do, the man said, spitting into the dirt. Your pa owed us. And since he's gone, looks like the debt falls on you. John stepped forward, his voice calm but hard. She said you don't belong here. The man looked him over, his grin widening. And who might you be? Hired help? Or just some fool wanderer? Doesn't matter, John said. You best ride out before the light's gone. The second rider laughed. You got a mouth on you, stranger. Vince leaned forward in his saddle. You interfere, you'll find yourself buried next to her old man. John didn't move, didn't blink. He just stared until Vince's smile faded. There was something in his eyes, a stillness, a weight, that said he'd buried men before. After a tense silence, Vince spat again. We'll be back, he muttered. Bring the papers then, or the land's ours. The 2 men turned and rode off, their laughter echoing off the trees. Claire stood silent, fists clenched. They killed him, she said finally. My pa said he cheated them on cattle. Sheriff called it a debt dispute, but I know what happened. John looked at the horizon where the riders disappeared. Then they'll come again. And they won't leave it at talk next time. I can handle it, she said again, though her voice wavered. John studied her, the defiance in her eyes, the tremor in her hands. Maybe. But not alone. She turned away. You don't even know me. I don't have to, he said softly. Just know what it feels like to lose everything. That night, John made camp near the edge of her land. The wind howled through the cottonwoods, and he sat staring into the fire, listening to the sound of the hammer from her cabin, still working after dark. She was a fool for trying, he thought, but the kind of fool the West respected. The kind that built things out of nothing. The kind he once was. He couldn't sleep. Each creak of the wind sounded like hooves. Each spark from the fire reminded him of the laughter of those 2 riders. He'd seen men like that before, greedy, mean, the kind that only understood a gun barrel. The next morning, he woke before dawn. Frost glazed the grass, and his breath hung thick in the air. Claire was already working again, splitting logs. You ever rest? He called out. Rest is for folks who can afford it, she said without looking up. He walked over, handing her a piece of jerky from his saddlebag. You'll need your strength. She hesitated, then took it. You're still here. Guess I am. You got nowhere else to go? He looked off toward the hills. Nowhere worth going. She studied him for a moment. You lost someone. He nodded once. Wife and daughter. Long time ago. I'm sorry, she said softly. So am I, he replied. That's why I ain't ridin' off this time. For the next week, they worked together, chopping, lifting, hammering, building something that began to look like more than just a shelter. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, not talking much, just listening to the wind and the coyotes far away. John found himself watching her hands as she worked, the way they trembled from cold yet never stopped. Sometimes she'd hum an old tune, one he hadn't heard since his wife used to hum while stirring soup back home. It made the ache in his chest worse and better at the same time. By the 7th night, the cabin stood solid and tall against the moonlight. The roof was half thatched, the door still rough-hewn, but it was a home. Claire smiled for the first time in days. Pa would have liked this, she said quietly. He'd be proud, John answered. But the peace didn't last. They came back 2 nights later. John woke to the sound of hooves, distant at first, then closer. He grabbed his revolver, motioning for Claire to stay quiet. The fire inside had burned low, the room lit only by the glow of embers. 3 shadows moved outside the window. Vince was one of them. John whispered, "Get low." The door burst open with a kick. Well, Vince sneered, stepping in with a shotgun. Told you we'd be back. John fired first. The shot tore through the dark, hitting one of the men square in the chest. The room filled with smoke and chaos, gunfire, shouting, splintered wood. Claire ducked behind the table, clutching her rifle. Vince fired, the blast tearing through the wall beside John. John rolled to cover, fired again, and the second man fell. But Vince moved fast, too fast. He grabbed Claire, dragging her upright, the shotgun pressed against her ribs. "Drop it, Mercer," Vince barked. "Or she dies." John froze, the revolver steady in his hand. "Let her go, Vince." Vince laughed. "Not a chance. She's my ticket out. You shoot me, she goes with me." Claire met John's eyes, and shook her head ever so slightly. Vince didn't see her reach for the knife on the table. In one swift motion, she drove it backward into his side. He roared, stumbling, the shotgun firing into the ceiling. John didn't hesitate, one shot, clean through the heart. Vince fell hard, the cabin filling with silence except for Claire's ragged breath. John lowered his gun slowly, stepping toward her. "You all right?" She nodded weakly, though her hands were trembling. "It's over." He looked at the bodies on the floor. "Not yet. We gotta get rid of them before dawn." They buried the men by the ridge, where the wind never stopped blowing. Neither spoke much, just worked till their hands were raw. When it was done, John stood there staring out at the horizon, the morning sun painting the snow gold. "You'll be safe now," he said. "You'll be leaving," she said quietly. He turned to her. "You want me gone?" She hesitated. "No. But you got ghosts, same as I do. Sometimes they don't let you stay." He smiled faintly. "Maybe they're tired of following me." She looked down, then back up. "If you stay, I can offer a roof. And coffee." "Coffee?" he said with a half grin. "You sure know how to tempt a man." They walked back to the cabin together. Smoke curled from the chimney, a thin line against the blue sky. Inside, the fire burned steady, warm. John hung his coat, sat by the hearth, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the need to keep moving. Claire poured 2 tin cups of coffee and handed him one. "You think they'll come again?" He took a sip. "Not the kind that can walk." She smiled, small, real, tired. "Then maybe I can finish this place in peace." He looked around at the half-finished room, the smell of pine and smoke filling the air. "You already have," he said. Days turned into weeks. The snow came heavy, blanketing the land, sealing them in together. They chopped wood, mended fences, patched the roof when it leaked. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't need to. John would catch himself watching her while she worked, the firelight soft on her face. She was strong, scarred, but kind. The kind that survived. One night, after supper, she looked up and asked softly, "You ever think you'd want a home again?" He thought about it, staring into the flames. "Didn't think I deserved one." "Maybe you do now," she said. He looked at her, really looked, and something inside him finally eased. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and endless. By spring, the cabin stood finished, walls sealed, porch built, smoke curling steady from the chimney. Travelers passing through sometimes saw it on the ridge and wondered who'd built such a place so far from town. But those who came close enough would see two figures working side by side, a woman with steel in her eyes and a man who'd stopped running from his ghosts. She had built her cabin one log at a time. He had rebuilt his heart the same way. And in that quiet corner of the wild Wyoming hills, where the wind carried the echo of old sorrows, the frontier gave them both something rare, a second chance. Because sometimes, out in the West, the people who seem most broken are the ones still building. And sometimes, a man doesn't find a family. He watches one rise from the ground, one log at a time. Ed.